First of all, welcome to Streetlit Audiobooks. Make sure to let me know where you from and like, hype, and subscribe. I got another banger for you. Hollywood Hustle. Chapter 1. The Queen of the Hills. Lola Conti stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling mirror in her Beverly Hills master suite and hated what she saw. Not the body, that was still tight, still expensive, still paid for in installments of Botox, laser, and the quiet terror of turning 47 in a town that treated women like milk. The face was the problem. The face looked hungry. She turned sideways, smoothed the silk robe over her hips, and reached for the diamond tennis bracelet Ross had given her 3 Christmases ago. The clasp was sticky. She forced it shut anyway. Outside the glass walls, the city glittered like it owed her something. Inside, the house felt too quiet. Ross had not come home last night. Again. Lola walked barefoot across the white marble, past the open closet that smelled of cedar and money, and into the dressing room that used to belong to the plastic surgeon's first wife. She had taken everything when she left that marriage. The house in the hills, the art, the reputation for being a woman who knew how to exit clean. She had walked into Ross Conti's life the same way, chin high, legs long, and a hunger that looked like ambition from a distance. She opened the top drawer of the vanity and stared at the small pile of stolen things, a gold Cartier lighter from the table at Craig's, a pair of sunglasses still tagged from the Fred Segwell display, a silk scarf she had slipped into her bag at the Four Seasons spa while the attendant turned her back. The rush never lasted longer than the drive home, but it was the only thing that still made her heart race the way it used to when Ross looked at her like she was the only woman in the room. Her phone buzzed on the marble counter. "BB, you up, girl?" Ross was at the chateau with Kiana Lancaster last night. Public. Very public. Thought you should hear it from me before the blogs. Lola's stomach dropped, then hardened. She typed back with steady thumbs. "I already know. See you at lunch." She deleted the thread, set the phone face down, and walked into the bathroom. The shower was still wet from Ross's morning routine, the one he kept even when he hadn't slept in their bed. She turned the water on scalding and stepped under it, letting it burn the night off her skin. By the time she dressed, white wide-leg trousers, a black silk tank that showed the collarbones he used to kiss, and the red-soled heels that made every hostess in town look twice. The anger had settled into something colder and more useful. Lola Conti did not do public scenes. She did strategy. She drove the black Range Rover herself, top down, music low, Kendrick in the speakers, the kind of beat that made the hills feel like they still belonged to people who had hustled for them. At the corner of Sunset and Benedict, she saw the white Maybach that belonged to Sade LaSalle pull out of the Four Seasons and head east. Sade didn't wave. Sade never waved first. Lola parked at the Beverly Hills Hotel, handed the keys to the kid in the white jacket, and walked into the Polo Lounge like she owned the reservation list. BB was already at the corner banquette, champagne open, dark sunglasses still on indoors. "You look expensive," BB said, air-kissing both cheeks. "Rage suits you." "I don't do rage in public." Lola slid into the booth. "Tell me everything." BB leaned in. They were in the garden, her hand on his thigh under the table. He laughed at something she said like he used to laugh at you. Then they left together, separate cars, but the same direction, west. Toward her place in Malibu, I'm guessing. Lola's fingers tightened around the stem of her glass. Kiana Lancaster is 29 years old and has never had a real job in her life. Her father still pays her a max. And Ross is about to turn 50 with no movie on the horizon, BB said softly. He's scared, Lola. Scared men do stupid things with pretty girls who still think they're the prize. Lola looked past BB toward the entrance. The lunch crowd was pure 2024 Hollywood. Agents in sneakers, actresses with faces still frozen from yesterday's fillers, a rapper-turned-producer holding court at a center table with 2 women who looked like they had been cast for decoration. None of them looked at Lola the way they used to, like she was the one who could get their husband a meeting, their script a read, their name on a list. She felt the old panic flicker, then she killed it. "I'm having a dinner Friday," she said. "Small, powerful, you're coming. So is Marley, and Montana if she can tear herself away from that script war with Oliver Eastern." BB raised an eyebrow. "You're inviting the gray women to the same table?" "I'm inviting everyone who still needs something from me," Lola said, "including my husband." She left the Polo Lounge with the check paid and the stolen lighter from Craig's still in her bag. On the way out, she paused at the gift shop, fingers brushing a pair of gold hoop earrings on a velvet tray. The salesgirl was busy with a tourist. Lola's hand closed around the hoops, slipped them into her pocket, and kept walking. The rush hit her in the chest like a first line of coke. By the time she reached the valet, it was already fading. Ross's car was in the driveway when she got home. The house smelled like his cologne and someone else's perfume. He was in the kitchen, shirtless, drinking protein shake out of a shaker bottle like he still had a premiere to train for. "You're up early," he said without looking at her. "I never went to sleep." Lola set her bag on the island. "How was the chateau?" He finally turned. The face that had once sold 10 million tickets still had the bones, still had the mouth that could make a woman forget her own name. But the eyes were tired in a way no amount of sleep could fix. "Don't start, Lola." "I'm not starting. I'm finishing. You were with Kiana Lancaster, in public. While your wife was home waiting for you to remember, he still has a career that needs managing." Ross set the shaker down hard. "My career, right. Because everything I am is still your project. Someone has to treat it like one." She walked toward him, heels clicking on the marble. "You're not 25 anymore, Ross. You're not the man Sadie LaSalle pulled out of that strip club in the valley and turned into a star. You're a man who needs a wife who knows how to keep the lights on in this house." He laughed, short and ugly. "You mean a wife who steals earrings from hotel gift shops and calls it coping?" The words landed. She felt the heat rise in her neck, but kept her face smooth. "At least I still know how to take what I want." Ross stepped close enough that she could smell the night on him. Whiskey, weed, and the faint sweetness of a younger woman's body oil. "Maybe that's the problem," he said. "Maybe I got tired of being taken." He walked past her toward the stairs. Lola stayed in the kitchen until she heard the bedroom door close. Then she opened her bag, took out the stolen gold hoops, and set them on the counter beside his protein shaker like a declaration of war. Her phone buzzed again, unknown number this time. The message was short. "Heard your husband is shopping for a younger model. If you ever want the real story on how Ross Conti got his first big break, call me. Sadie." Lola stared at the screen until the words burned. Then she saved the number, poured herself a glass of the good champagne Ross kept for investors, and walked out onto the terrace that overlooked the city he was slowly losing. Somewhere in that glittering grid, Kiana Lancaster was probably still asleep in sheets that smelled like him. Somewhere else, Sadie LaSalle was sharpening whatever knife she had been holding for 20 years. And somewhere in Philadelphia, a young man named Deaky Andrews was packing a bag and looking at a faded photograph of two people who had no idea he was coming. Lola raised her glass to the hills. "Let the games begin," she said to no one. And for the first time in months, she smiled like she meant it. Chapter 2. The Ex-Wife's Alimony. Marley Gray woke up alone in the house Neil had bought her as a goodbye present and immediately checked her phone for two things: the balance of her alimony deposit and whether Montana's name had appeared in any trades overnight. The money was there. The name was not. Good. She stretched under the silk sheets, long brown legs kicking free, and stared at the ceiling fan that still turned in the exact slow rhythm Neil used to set when they were still married, and he still pretended to be sober. The house in Holmby Hills was paid for. The cars were paid for. The quiet was paid for. What was not paid for was the way her stomach still clenched every time she saw Montana's face on a Zoom panel talking about elevating Black stories in mainstream cinema like she had invented the concept. Marley sat up, pulled on a robe that cost more than most people's rent, and walked barefoot to the kitchen. The housekeeper had already laid out fresh berries, Greek yogurt, and the green juice that tasted like punishment. Marley ignored all of it and made coffee the way her father used to. Strong, black, no apology. Tyrone Sanderson's voice still lived in her head, even though the man himself had been in the ground 6 years. You are a Sanderson. You do not beg. You do not chase. You wait for them to realize they need you. She had waited. Neil had left anyway. Her phone lit up with a text from Lola. Dinner Friday? My house? Wear something that makes Montana feel average and bring the good dirt on Neil if you have any left. Marley smiled for the first time that morning. Lola Conti still knew how to gather the wounded and turn them into weapons. She typed back, I'll be there. Tell Ross I said he looks tired. Then she opened her laptop and pulled up the latest draft of Montana's script that somehow kept leaking to the right people, street people. A gritty, beautiful, overlong love letter to the block Montana claimed she still belonged to, even though she hadn't lived below the 10 freeway in a decade. Oliver Eastern was trying to gut it and turn it into another disposable streaming thriller. Montana was fighting him with the kind of righteous fury that made white studio executives nervous and Black ones quietly supportive until the budget numbers came in. Marley should have been rooting for the script to die. Instead, she found herself reading the latest pages and feeling the old, ugly twist of respect. The girl could write. That was the problem. She closed the laptop, showered, and dressed like a woman who still received actually paid for. By the time she slid behind the wheel of the white Bentley, the sun was high enough to make the hills look expensive again. She drove to the salon on Robertson because Coco had texted that Angel was working and the child looks like she hasn't slept in 3 days. Marley liked Angel Hudson the way rich women sometimes liked younger ones who still believed the fairy tale, carefully from a distance, with just enough softness to feel generous. The salon smelled like expensive products and secrets. Coco spotted her the second she walked in, threw both hands in the air, and sashayed over in leopard print trousers that should have been illegal before noon. Marley Gray in the flesh, looking like alimony and good decisions. Come sit. Angel, baby, pause that blowout and come speak to the queen. Angel Hudson appeared from the back, 6 months pregnant and glowing in the way only the truly young could manage. Her hair was pulled up in a messy bun, edges laid, face bare except for gloss. She looked like the kind of girl Holliwood chewed up for sport. Hi, Miss Gray, Angel said softly. Marley, only my enemies call me Miss Gray. She touched Angel's arm. How's the baby? How's Buddy? Angel's smile flickered. Baby's fine. Buddy's auditioning. A lot. Said LaSalle called him in for something yesterday. He hasn't stopped talking about it. Coco made a face behind Angel's back that clearly said, Lord, that boy. Marley filed the information away. Said LaSalle did not call people in for something unless she had already decided what they were going to cost. Tell Buddy to be careful with Said, Marley said lightly. She collects pretty boys the way some women collect handbags, and she never returns them in the same condition. Angel's hand drifted to her stomach. He's not like that anymore. He promised. Coco and Marley exchanged a look over the girl's head. Promises in this town had the shelf life of opened champagne. Marley stayed for a quick silk press she didn't need, left a tip large enough to make Angel's eyes widen, and drove toward the studio lot where Neil was supposedly in meetings all day. She didn't go in. She just sat across the street in the Bentley with the engine running and watched the gate like a woman who still knew the codes. Neil's black Tesla finally appeared at 2:17 p.m. The passenger seat was not empty. Gina Germain's famous profile was unmistakable even behind the tinted glass, high cheekbones, mouth that had launched 1,000 thirst posts, eyes that knew exactly how to look innocent while calculating the body count. Marley watched them turn left toward the private road that led to the bungalows. She did not follow. She simply opened her phone, took a slow, clear photo of the car's license plate as it disappeared, and sent it to no one. Yet. Then she drove home, poured a glass of the wine Neil used to say was too expensive for weekdays, and sat on the terrace that still faced the same hills he had once promised would always be theirs. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number this time. The message was only 2 words and a location. He's next. D. Marley stared at the screen. She did not know any D. She did not know why the message made the fine hairs on her arms stand up. She only knew that in this town, anonymous threats were either nothing or everything. She deleted it, blocked the number, and finished the wine anyway. Across the city, in a cheap motel off Holliwood Boulevard, Deaky Andrews sat on the edge of a stained mattress and looked at the same 2 photographs he had carried from Philadelphia. One was old, faded, the faces of a man and a woman who had been young once. The other was recent, printed from the internet, glossy, smiling. He touched the second photo with a finger that still had someone else's blood under the nail. Almost there, he whispered. Outside, the city kept glittering like it had no idea what was coming. Chapter 3. The Star Maker's Long Memory. Sad LaSalle did not believe in accidents. She believed in timing, leverage, and the particular satisfaction of watching a man who once needed her realize he still did. Her office sat high above Sunset in a glass corner that made the city look like it belonged to her. The walls were covered in framed photographs of the careers she had built and the ones she had quietly ended. Ross Conti's early headshot still hung in the back row, younger, hungrier, the same mouth that used to say her name like a prayer. She had left it there on purpose. Her assistant knocked once and opened the door. "Buddy Hudson is here, 10 minutes early." Sade smiled without showing teeth. "Send him in and hold my calls." Buddy walked in wearing the kind of expensive casual that still looked borrowed. Tall, pretty, the body of a man who had once sold it by the hour and now pretended that chapter was closed. He carried a script under one arm and the nervous energy of someone who knew exactly how thin the line was between discovery and exposure. "Ms. LaSalle," he said, "thank you for seeing me. Sit." She gestured to the chair across from her desk. "I read the sides. You're good. Better than the last 3 pretty boys they sent me who thought jawlines were enough." Buddy's smile came quick and grateful. "I've been working. Acting classes, voice, everything. I'm ready." Sade leaned back. "Ready is a relative word in this town. I made Ross Conti ready once. He was sleeping in a car and dancing for tips when I found him. I put him in his first film. I taught him how to walk into a room like he owned the air. And when the money came, he walked out of my bed and into the nearest available blonde with a trust fund." Buddy's eyes flickered. He was smart enough not to defend a man he had never met. Sade continued, voice smooth. "I'm considering you for a supporting role in a project that will actually shoot. Not another pilot that dies in testing. Real money, real exposure. But I need to know something first." "Anything." "Your wife, the pregnant one who works at Coco's salon, does she know every version of how you used to make rent?" Buddy's jaw tightened for half a second. "She knows enough. The rest is buried." "Nothing stays buried in Los Angeles," Sade said, "especially not when certain people decide it would be useful to dig. I'm not threatening you, Buddy. I'm educating you. If I put my name on you, your past becomes my problem. I don't like problems I didn't create." She slid a single sheet of paper across the desk. A non-disclosure, already highlighted in the places that mattered. "Sign it, then we talk about the role." Buddy signed. His hand was steady. Sade watched him the way a woman watches a horse she is thinking about buying, checking the legs, the eyes, the places where the brakes might already be. When he left, she opened the bottom drawer of her desk and took out an old envelope. Inside was a photograph of Ross Conti from 1999, shirtless, laughing, one arm around her waist on a balcony in Cannes. On the back, in her own handwriting, "He will pay for this." She had waited 25 years. She could wait a little longer. Her phone lit up with a text from an unknown number that was not unknown to her. "Ross is slipping. The girl is getting bold. Want me to push?" Sade typed back one word. "Wait." She stood and walked to the window. Below her, the city moved like it always did, beautiful, ruthless, and completely unaware that some debts never expired. Chapter 4. Street People. Montana Gray sat in the conference room on the 10th floor of Eastern Productions and refused to blink first. Oliver Eastern occupied the head of the table like a man who had never been told no by anyone whose opinion he respected. Mid-50s, expensive sneakers, the kind of tan that came from private jets and denial. He had built his reputation on loud opinions and louder budgets. Montana's script offended both. "Street People is too long," he said, flipping through the latest draft with two fingers like it might contaminate him. "Too talky. Too many scenes where people just feel things. Audiences don't pay for feelings, Montana. They pay for plot and tits and maybe a car chase if we're lucky." Montana kept her voice level. "It's a story about 3 generations of women trying to survive the same block that keeps trying to kill them. The feelings are the plot." Oliver smiled the smile of a man who enjoyed the sport. "And I'm the man who greenlights the money. Right now, the money wants fewer feelings and more accessibility. We cast a bankable name in the mother role. We cut the grandmother's entire arc. We add a male love interest who isn't a fuck-up. And we change the title to something people can say without feeling like they're about to get lectured." Montana's pen stopped moving. "You want to gut it." "I want to sell it." Oliver leaned forward. "You're talented. Everyone says so. But talent without protection is just a nice way to stay broke. Take the notes, or I find another writer who will." The room went quiet except for the soft hum of the air conditioning. Montana's producing partner, a sharp young woman named Reese who had been silent until now, shifted in her chair. Montana stood. She gathered her pages slowly, making him wait. "I'll take the notes under consideration," she said. "And I'll be sending a revised draft that still has a grandmother, still has the block, and still has a title that means something. If that doesn't work for you, you're welcome to try to fire me. Just remember my husband's next film is the one every actor in this town wants to be in. Neil Gray still returns my calls. You might want to think about whose side of the bed you prefer to wake up on." Oliver's smile thinned. "Careful, Montana. Threats from writers are adorable until they aren't." She walked out without another word. Reese followed, already pulling out her phone to call the lawyer. In the elevator, Montana finally let her hands shake. She hated that Oliver could still get under her skin. She hated more that part of her wondered if he was right, that the version of the story she loved might be too true for the marketplace. Her phone buzzed. "Neil, dinner tonight? Just us. I miss your face." She stared at the message. Neil had been distant for weeks, claiming late edits and location scouts. She had almost believed him until Marley's careful silence at lunch last week told her otherwise. Montana typed back, "Rain check, script war. Don't wait up." She deleted the draft of the longer message that asked where he had really been the night before. Outside the building, the late afternoon light turned everything gold and dishonest. Montana walked to her car, slid behind the wheel, and sat for a long minute with the engine off. Then she opened the Notes app and began rewriting the grandmother's monologue from memory, word by word, refusing to let Oliver Eastern take even that. Across town, Gina Germain stepped out of Neil Gray's Tesla and into the private bungalow he kept for quiet work. She wore a simple white dress that photographed like innocence and moved like the opposite. Neil closed the door behind them and already looked like a man who knew he was making a mistake he could not afford. "You're late." Gina said, smiling. Traffic. She crossed the room, took his face in both hands, and kissed him like she was collecting evidence. I read the new pages for the role you promised me. They're good, but they could be better if the director was motivated. Neil's hands settled on her waist out of habit. Gina, don't. She pressed a finger to his lips. We're past the part where you pretend this is only about the work. I want the part, the real part, not the best friend who dies in Act 2. And you're going to give it to me, because the alternative is a very public conversation about where the great Neil Gray spends his afternoons when his wife thinks he's an editorial. Neil closed his eyes. The old thirst for a drink rose sharp and familiar. He had 3 years sober. He intended to keep them. But Gina Germain tasted like the kind of relapse that ruined more than just a streak. Outside the bungalow, a groundskeeper walked past with a leaf blower, completely unaware that the quietest rooms on the lot were the ones where careers and marriages went to die. Chapter 5. The Daughter's Game. Kiana Lancaster woke up in her Malibu bedroom with Ross Conti's scent still on her sheets and a smile she didn't bother hiding. At 29, she had perfected the art of looking like trouble while claiming innocence. The ocean crashed below the deck. Her phone was already full of messages she had no intention of answering yet. She stretched, naked, and walked to the mirror. The body was still the one that made men forget their wives. Long legs, high breasts, the kind of face that photographed expensive even without makeup. She had her father's eyes, George Lancaster's famous warm brown, and her mother's old hunger. The combination had always been lethal. Ross had left before sunrise, the way married men did when they still pretended the night had been an accident. Kiana didn't mind. She preferred the ones who left early. It gave her time to plan. She showered, pulled on a silk robe, and called her father. George answered on the second ring, voice already carrying that careful patience he reserved for her. You're up early. I have news, she said. I'm seeing someone. Silence stretched. George Lancaster had survived 5 decades in Hollywood by reading what people didn't say. Anyone I know? Ross Conti. The silence got longer. Kiana? He's still beautiful, and he's available in all the ways that matter. He's married to Lola, and he's finished. You understand that, right? The man hasn't had a real role in 4 years. Kiana smiled at her reflection. Then he'll be grateful. Grateful men are useful. George's voice dropped. I didn't raise you to collect broken toys. You raised me to win, she said. Same thing. She hung up before he could answer and walked out onto the deck. The Pacific looked clean and indifferent. Somewhere in the hills, Lola Conti was probably already sharpening whatever weapon she planned to use. Kiana almost respected her for it. Almost. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ross. Last night was a mistake. We can't do that again. She typed back slowly, tasting every word. Then why are you already hard thinking about it? She left him on read and went inside to choose a dress that would photograph well if anyone happened to catch her leaving a certain restaurant later. Across the city, George Lancaster sat in the breakfast room of the house he shared with Pamela and stared at the orange juice he no longer wanted. Pamela watched him over the rim of her coffee cup, already amused. Your daughter again? She asked. She's sleeping with Ross Conti. Pamela laughed, low and genuine. Of course she is. The girl collects faded stars the way some women collect handbags. At least this one still has a face. George looked at his wife, 30 years together, and she could still cut him with affection. I should talk to Lola. You should stay out of it, Pamela said. Lola Conti didn't survive this town by needing rescue, and your daughter didn't become your daughter by listening. He knew she was right. That didn't make the knot in his chest any looser. Chapter 6. The Hustler's Wife. Angel Hudson stood in the tiny kitchen of the apartment she shared with Buddy and tried to remember the last time she had felt safe. The baby kicked hard under her ribs, a reminder that safety was no longer optional. 6 months along, and already the world felt too sharp. Buddy had been gone since early morning. Another meeting with Said LaSalle that he refused to discuss in detail. He came home smelling like new cologne and old secrets. Angel hated how much she still wanted to believe him. She poured cereal she didn't want and sat at the small table by the window. Outside, the courtyard of their building looked the same as always: cracked concrete, someone else's laundry, the distant sound of a television arguing with itself. This was not the life Buddy had promised when he put the ring on her finger 6 months ago. The ring was still pretty. The promises had started to rust. Her phone rang. Coco. Baby girl, you coming in today, or am I firing you for real this time? Angel smiled in spite of herself. I'm coming, just slow. Slow is fine. Pregnant is fine. What isn't fine is that husband of yours walking around like he just discovered oxygen. Said LaSalle doesn't do charity, Angel. You tell him I said that. I will. You won't, but I love you anyway. Get here before the old ladies start asking for you by name. Angel hung up and rested both hands on her belly. The baby shifted again, restless. She whispered the only prayer she still trusted. Just let him be telling the truth this time. Buddy walked through the door 20 minutes later, carrying coffee and a smile that tried too hard. He kissed her forehead, then her stomach, then sat across from her like a man rehearsing honesty. Said wants me for a real role, he said. Supporting, but good. Pays enough that we can move before the baby comes. Somewhere with a real bedroom. Angel studied his face. The face was still beautiful. The eyes were harder to read than they used to be. What does she want in return? My best work. Buddy. He reached across the table and took her hand. I told her everything that matters. The rest is dead and buried. We're good. Angel wanted to believe the pressure of his fingers. She wanted the version of the story where the past stayed past and the future arrived clean. Instead, she felt the old, familiar fear settle under her ribs beside the baby. I have to go to work, she said. Buddy stood with her, helped her into her shoes, and walked her to the car like a man who still remembered how to be gentle. At the door, he kissed her again, longer this time. I love you, he said. Both of you. Angel drove to the salon with the windows down and the radio low. Coco was already waiting with a cape and a look that said he had heard every version of this story before. Sit, Coco ordered. Tell me everything he said, and I'll tell you what he left out. Angel sat. The first tear surprised her. Coco handed her a tissue without comment and began sectioning her hair like the conversation was just another service on the menu. 2 blocks away, in a rented room that smelled of bleach and takeout, Deaky Andrews pinned another photograph to the wall. This one was recent. Angel Hudson leaving the salon yesterday, one hand on her stomach, face turned toward the sun. He had followed her for 3 days without being seen. Patience was the only talent he had ever trusted. He touched the edge of the photo with a finger that still carried the faint metallic smell of the last thing he had done in Philadelphia. Soon, he whispered to the empty room. Everybody meets everybody soon. Outside, Los Angeles kept shining like it had never once been a place where beautiful people disappeared. Chapter 7. The Hostess Sets the Table. Lola Conti spent the morning turning her dining room into a battlefield disguised as a dinner party. White orchids, low candlelight, the good crystal that made people feel watched. She had invited exactly the right combination of allies, enemies, and people who still owed her something. BB arrived first, early, and already armed with gossip. Kiana posted a story this morning. Ocean view, 1 glass of champagne. Caption was just a music note. Everyone knows what that means. Lola arranged napkins with precise fingers. It means she's young enough to think mystery is a strategy. And Ross? Ross will be here. He'll smile. He'll pour wine. He'll pretend the last 72 hours didn't happen. Lola looked up. And then I'll remind him who keeps the lights on in this house. Marley Gray walked in next, elegant and cool, carrying a bottle of wine that cost more than most people's car notes. She kissed Lola on both cheeks and took in the table with one raised eyebrow. You're serving war with the first course. I'm serving clarity, Lola said. There's a difference. Montana arrived 20 minutes later, still vibrating from her latest clash with Oliver Eastern. She looked tired in the way only women who fought for their own pages ever looked. Neil had sent regrets. Lola had expected that. Gina Germain's name had started circulating in the quieter conversations, and Lola made it her business to hear the quiet ones. By 8, the table was full. Ross sat at the opposite end looking like a man who had rehearsed sincerity in the car. Kiana Lancaster had not been invited. That absence was its own statement. Conversation stayed polite through the first course. Industry talk, streaming numbers, whose project had just lost its financing. Then BB, loyal and slightly drunk, leaned in with the smile of a woman lighting a fuse. I heard Said LaSalle is packaging something with a new face. Pretty boy, used to run in certain circles. Name's Buddy Hudson. Ross's fork paused for half a second. Lola saw it. She always saw it. Marley spoke carefully. Say doesn't package anyone without a reason, especially not anyone connected to Ross's old life. The temperature at the table dropped. Ross set his fork down and reached for his wine. Sade and I buried that years ago. Lola's voice was soft enough to carry. Sade doesn't bury things, baby. She refrigerates them. Silence settled. Montana looked between them, calculating. BB pretended sudden interest in her salad. Marley simply watched, the way women who had already lost one marriage watched the early signs of another collapse. Ross stood. I need air. He walked out to the terrace. Lola let him go. She turned back to her guests and smiled the smile that had kept her invited to every important room for 15 years. Dessert in 10, she said, and then we talk about who still has power in this town and who only thinks they do. Outside, Ross lit a cigarette he wasn't supposed to smoke and stared at the city lights. His phone vibrated. Kiana. I can be at the gate in 20 minutes. He stared at the message until the words blurred. Then he typed the only true thing he had said all day. Don't. He deleted it before sending and put the phone away. Behind him, the glass doors reflected a man who no longer recognized the shape of his own hunger. Chapter 8. The Director's Weakness. Neil Gray sat in the dark of the bungalow and listened to Gina Germain breathe like a woman who already owned the ending of the story. The affair was 3 weeks old and already felt like a year. Every time he told himself it would be the last time, her mouth found the exact place that made him forget the promise. She sat up, sheet pooled at her waist, and reached for the script pages he had brought. These are better, but the role still reads like an apology. I don't do apologies on. You're already in the film. I'm in the friend role. I want the woman who breaks him, the one the audience still thinks about in the parking lot. Neil rubbed his face. The old craving for a drink sat at the base of his throat like a second pulse. 3 years clean. He could feel the days counting themselves in the dark. Montana will never agree to that rewrite. Gina smiled, slow and certain. Then you don't ask Montana. You tell her, you're the director. Act like it. She leaned over and kissed him with the kind of precision that felt like paperwork. When she pulled back, her voice was almost gentle. I took pictures last time, just in case you forget how persuasive I can be. Neil went still. You what? Insurance, she said. Every smart woman in this town carries some. Don't look so shocked. You knew what this was the first night you didn't go home. He stood, pulled on his shirt, and felt the room tilt. Gina watched him the way a cat watches a door that might open. I'll look at the pages again, he said. You'll do more than look. She settled back against the pillows. And Neil? Tell your wife I said hello when you finally make it home. She seems lovely, from a distance. He left without answering. The night air outside the bungalow felt too thin. He sat in the Tesla for a long time before starting the engine, forehead against the steering wheel, counting breaths the way the program had taught him. Across the lot, Oliver Eastern stood at his office window and watched the Tesla pull away. He had cameras in more places than people realized. Information was the only currency that never lost value. He smiled to himself and sent a short text to a number he kept under a false name. Gray is slipping. The girl has teeth. Useful. Then he turned back to Montana's latest draft and began marking pages with the red pen he reserved for writers who still believed their words were sacred. In a different part of the city, Detective Leon Rosemont stood in a Philadelphia precinct that smelled of burnt coffee and old paper and stared at the board that had taken over his wall. Photographs, timelines, a single name written in black marker at the center, Deaky Andrews. His partner dropped a fresh file on the desk. Another one. Same signature. He's not slowing down. Leon opened the file. Another body. Another city closer to the coast. He felt the familiar weight settle in his chest, the one his wife Millie hated, the one that kept him awake while she slept alone. He's going to Los Angeles, Leon said. Everything in his history points west. You don't have jurisdiction in Los Angeles? I have a feeling. Leon closed the file. And feelings have gotten me this far. He picked up the phone and dialed a number in the LAPD he hadn't used in years. Outside the precinct windows, the Philadelphia night felt heavy and unfinished. Somewhere ahead of him, a young man with a quiet face and a long list of names was already choosing his next door. Chapter 9. The casting couch is a long table. Buddy Hudson left Sad LaSalle's office with the sides in one hand and the weight of her stare still on the back of his neck. The role was real. The money was real. The price. He drove to the apartment with the windows down, trying to outrun the old version of himself that lived in the mirror. Angel was already home when he walked in, feet up, one hand on her stomach, the television playing a muted cooking show. She looked up and smiled the soft smile that still undid him. How did it go? She wants me to read tomorrow. Call back with the director. He set the pages on the counter and kissed the top of her head. It's happening, Angel. For real this time. Angel studied his face the way she always did when the news sounded too clean. What did she ask you about me? Buddy hesitated half a second too long. Nothing that matters. Everything matters when a woman like that is involved. Angel shifted, wincing as the baby pressed against her ribs. Coco says Sade collects people. She doesn't hire them. Coco talks too much? Coco loves me. That's different. Buddy sat beside her and took her hand. The apartment felt smaller than it had that morning. I'm doing this for us, for the baby, so we can get out of this place before he's born. Or she. Or she. He kissed her knuckles. Trust me a little longer. Angel wanted to. The problem was that trust had become a muscle she used less and less. She let him hold her hand anyway and stared at the muted television until the silence felt like another person in the room. Across town, Jason Swank stood in the showroom of his interior design studio and watched a client run her fingers along a bolt of silk that cost more per yard than most people's rent. The client was 52, recently divorced, and lonely in the particular way money never fixed. Jason knew the look. He had built a second business on it. His phone buzzed with a message from an old number he still kept active. Need a reliable face for a private party Friday? High-end? Discreet. Your usual rate plus 20. Jason typed back without hesitation. Send the address. And the rules. He had not put Buddy back on the rotation in over a year. That did not mean the option had disappeared. In this town, people rarely left the life completely. They just changed the lighting. He smiled at the client, poured more champagne, and began describing how the right curtains could make a woman forget she had ever been left. Chapter 10. Blood on the Map. Deaky Andrews crossed into California just after midnight with 3 changes of clothes, a stolen gun, and a list of names written in a handwriting that had grown steadier with every state. The desert looked empty under the moon. He liked empty. Empty meant fewer witnesses. He had left Philadelphia with a single purpose and a growing body count that no longer surprised him. The first 2 had been practice. The third had been necessary. The fourth had simply been in the way. He did not think of them as murders. He thought of them as corrections. In a rest stop outside Barstow, he unfolded the newest photograph and laid it on the steering wheel. Angel Hudson again, leaving the salon, one hand under her belly, face turned toward a sun that did not know her name. On the back of the photo, he had written a single word in black ink: almost. He did not know yet how she connected to the older pictures in his bag. He only knew the feeling that had started in his chest the first time he saw her face online. The same feeling that had driven him out of Philadelphia and across the country with blood under his nails. His phone, prepaid, untraceable, buzzed once. A news alert from a local Pennsylvania station. Another body found. The description was careful, but Deaky recognized the details. He deleted the alert and turned the phone off. 2,000 miles behind him, Detective Leon Rosemont stood in his kitchen at 3:17 a.m., while the coffee maker hissed and his wife Millie slept upstairs. The latest report sat open on the counter. Same signature, same calm violence. The path was no longer a theory. It was a straight line west. Millie appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes tired. "You're going after him." "I don't have a choice." "You always have a choice. You just never take the one that keeps you home." Leon poured the coffee he would not finish. "He's going to hurt more people, Millie. I can feel it." She looked at him for a long time. Then she walked over, kissed his cheek, and whispered the same words she had used for 15 years. "Come back." He nodded. Both of them knew the nod was not a promise. It was only the best he could offer. By sunrise, Deaky was already on the 15, heading toward Los Angeles with the windows down and the radio off. The city lights eventually appeared on the horizon like a promise and a warning at the same time. He smiled at them the way some men smile at old friends. In Beverly Hills, Lola Conti stood on her terrace with a glass of water she had not tasted and watched the same sunrise paint the hills gold. Ross had not come home. Again. Her phone held 3 unreturned messages and one new one from Saad LaSalle that simply read, "Dinner was lovely. We should talk soon about old debts." Lola deleted the message, set the phone down, and began planning the next move with the cold clarity of a woman who had already survived worse. The city below her was waking up. So were the knives. Chapter 11. Old Debts, New Interest. Saad LaSalle chose the restaurant the way other women chose weapons. Private dining room, low light, a table that forced eye contact. She arrived first, ordered the wine Ross used to drink when he still belonged to her, and waited. Ross walked in 12 minutes late, wearing the expression of a man who already regretted the invitation. He sat without kissing her cheek. The years had not softened the space between them. "You look tired," Said said. "You look expensive." She smiled. "I am. Sit. We have history to discuss." Ross glanced at the door like he might still leave. "Whatever this is, Said, I'm not interested." "You were interested once. Very interested. On your knees, interested." She poured the wine herself. "I made you. Then you left. I've waited a long time to collect the balance." Ross leaned back. "I'm married. I'm not the same man." "You're a fading star with a wandering dick and a wife who's running out of ways to save you. That makes you exactly the same man. only older and more useful. Sade slid a thin folder across the table. Buddy Hudson, I'm putting him in a film. He's hungry, talented, and carrying just enough dirt to be controllable. I want you to mentor him publicly. Take him to lunch, get photographed, make the industry believe the great Ross Conti still has something to give. Ross opened the folder, glanced at Buddy's headshot, and closed it again. Why? Because when the time comes, I want every door that still opens for you to open for him too. And because you owe me a career. His will do. Ross laughed once, short and bitter. And if I say no? Sade's voice stayed soft. Then I start remembering things out loud, about the early years, about certain parties, about the night in New York when you were so high you didn't notice who else was in the room. Lola's very good at managing scandals, but even she has limits. The threat landed clean. Ross stared at the wine he had not touched. I'll think about it. You'll do it, Sade said, and you'll smile while you do. That's the part you always did best. She stood, left the folder, and walked out before he could answer. Outside, her driver held the door. Sade slid into the back seat and allowed herself one small, private smile. The first piece had moved. Chapter 12. The Pregnant Girl and the Stranger. Angel Hudson locked up the salon at 7:30. Coco's voice still echoing in her head about taking it easy and drinking more water. The parking lot behind the building was half empty. The evening air carried the smell of someone's dinner and distant traffic. She was halfway to her car when she felt it, the particular stillness that meant someone was watching. Angel turned. A young man stood near the dumpster, hands in the pockets of a plain jacket, face half in shadow. He wasn't moving toward her. He wasn't leaving either. You need something? She called, voice steady even as her free hand settled over her belly. The man tilted his head. In the weak light, she saw that he was younger than she had first thought, maybe mid-20s, with a quiet, almost polite face. His eyes, though, were wrong. Too still. You look like someone I used to know, he said. The accent was East Coast. Soft. Careful. Angel took one step back toward the salon door. I don't think so. Maybe not. He didn't smile. You're Angel, right? Works for Coco? Married to the actor. The fact that he knew her name made the air thinner. Angel reached for her phone. I'm just heading home, she said. Have a good night. She unlocked the car, slid in, and locked the doors in one motion. The man didn't follow. He simply watched her pull out of the lot, head turning slowly as she passed. In the rearview mirror, he was still standing there when she turned the corner. Angel drove 3 blocks before she allowed herself to breathe. She called Buddy. It went to voicemail. She called Coco. Someone was outside the salon, she said. He knew my name, knew about Buddy, East Coast accent, just standing there staring. Coco's voice went sharp. You get somewhere public right now, I'm calling Adrian. You don't go home until I say. Angel pulled into a well-lit gas station and sat with the engine running, both hands on the wheel, the baby kicking hard as if it felt the fear, too. She kept checking the mirrors, no sign of the man. That somehow made it worse. Across the city, Deaky Andrews walked back to the borrowed car he had left 2 streets over. He sat in the driver's seat and opened the notebook where he kept the names. Next to Angel Hudson's, he drew a small, neat star. He had not planned to speak to her yet. The words had simply arrived. That was happening more often lately, the feeling that the story already knew its ending and was only waiting for him to catch up. He started the engine and drove toward the cheap motel he had chosen near the 10. Tomorrow, he would find the others on the list. The old photographs in his bag felt heavier every day. In the gas station lot, Angel finally reached Buddy. His voice was warm, distracted, somewhere with music in the background. I'm fine, she lied. Just ready to come home. She did not tell him about the man with the still eyes. Not yet. Some fears were easier to carry alone until you knew whether they were real. The baby kicked once more, hard, as if disagreeing. Chapter 13. The Mentor and the Trap. Ross Conti met Buddy Hudson for lunch at a quiet Italian place in West Hollywood, where the lighting was flattering and the tables were far enough apart for dangerous conversations. He had agreed to Sade's demand the way drowning men agree to the first rope thrown, without looking too hard at who was holding the other end. Buddy arrived on time, clean, respectful, the kind of hungry that still looked polite. He shook Ross's hand with both of his and sat like a man who understood the value of the seat. "I appreciate this," Buddy said. "Ms. LaSalle said you don't do this for just anybody." Ross ordered a club soda he didn't want. "Sade doesn't ask, she collects. You're the latest piece." Buddy's smile stayed easy. "I'm just trying to work." "That's what I told myself once." Ross studied the younger man. The face was open. The eyes were not. "How much does your wife know about the years before the wedding ring?" The question landed. Buddy's fingers tightened once around his water glass and then relaxed. "Enough," he said. "The rest is done." "Nothing's done in this town. It just waits." Ross leaned in. "Sade wants me to walk you into rooms. I'll do it. But understand the exchange. Every door I open for you is a door she can close on me later. You're not my protege, you're her insurance policy." Buddy met his gaze without flinching. "Then I'll make sure the policy pays out for both of us." They talked through the meal about the role, the director, the particular way cameras still loved certain faces. When the check came, Ross paid. Outside on the sidewalk, a photographer who somehow always knew where to stand caught them shaking hands. By the time Ross reached his car, the photo was already circulating with captions about Ross Conti's generous new chapter. He sat behind the wheel and called Lola. She answered on the first ring. "I saw the picture," she said. "Sade moves fast. She's using him to get to me. She's using both of you to get what she wants. There's a difference." Lola's voice was calm, the kind of calm that came after the screaming had already happened in private. "Come home tonight. We need to decide how much of this marriage is still worth saving." Ross stared at the traffic. "And if I don't have an answer?" "Then I'll decide for both of us," Lola said, and hung up. Chapter 14. The Night the City Noticed. Angel did not tell Buddy about the man behind the salon until the third night. She waited until the apartment was dark, the baby restless under her ribs, and Buddy's breathing had settled into the rhythm that meant he was almost asleep. "There was someone in the parking lot," she whispered. "After work. He knew my name, knew about you." East Coast voice, just stood there watching. Buddy sat up so fast the mattress shifted. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I wanted it to be nothing." Angel's voice cracked. "Because every time something feels dangerous, I start thinking about the baby and the fact that we still don't have a real safety net." Buddy turned on the lamp. His face had gone tight in a way she had only seen a few times before when the past got too close. "Describe him." She did. Height, still eyes, the way he had spoken like they already shared a secret. Buddy listened without interrupting, then reached for his phone. "I'm calling Coco, and I'm driving you to and from the salon until we know what this is. You have callbacks." "I'll move them." He was already texting. "Nobody gets to scare my wife and walk away clean." Angel watched him and felt the familiar mix of love and dread. The protective version of Buddy was beautiful. It was also the version that sometimes solved problems in ways that created larger ones. Across the city, Deaky Andrews sat on the edge of the motel bed with the television muted and the notebook open. He had followed Angel home the night she left the gas station. He now knew the building, the apartment window that stayed lit longest, the make of Buddy's car. Patience had always been his real talent. He turned to a fresh page and wrote two new names beneath Angel's: Ross Conti, Lola Conti. He did not yet know why they belonged on the list. He only knew the photographs in his bag had started to feel like they were arranging themselves. The old ones from Philadelphia. The newer ones he had printed in a copy shop near the airport. Faces that repeated across years like a song he could almost hum. His prepaid phone lit up with a local news alert. Another body had been found 2 states back. The details were still vague. Deaky deleted it without reading the full story. The past was only useful if it stayed behind him. In a different motel closer to the airport, Detective Leon Rosemont unpacked a single suitcase and laid his service weapon on the nightstand beside a photograph of Millie. He had taken emergency leave, called in every favor, and followed the trail until the trail became Los Angeles. The local contact in LAPD had been polite and unconvinced. Leon did not need conviction yet. He needed time. He opened the file he had carried across the country and stared at the composite sketch that no longer felt like a sketch. Deaky Andrews had a face now. A quiet, almost forgettable face that had already crossed half the country without anyone stopping him long enough. Leon turned off the light and lay on top of the covers fully dressed. Sleep would be thin. That was fine. The city outside was full of beautiful people who had no idea a correction was already walking their streets. On the other side of town, Montana Gray sat alone in her office with the latest set of notes from Oliver Eastern and a glass of wine she had not tasted. Neil had not come home again. The excuse this time was a late sound mix. The truth lived in the photographs Gina Germain had not yet sent, but had already described in careful detail. Montana opened a new document and began writing a scene that was not in the script. A woman discovering the exact shape of her husband's betrayal. She wrote until her hands cramped, until the words stopped feeling like fiction. Then she saved the file under a name no one else would ever see and finally drank the wine. Outside her window, the hills glittered like nothing bad could reach them. Montana knew better. In this town, the worst things always arrived wearing perfect smiles and perfect lighting. Chapter 15. The Marriage Inventory. Lola Conti waited until Ross closed the front door behind him before she spoke. The house was quiet except for the low hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of someone else's party drifting up from the canyon. She stood in the living room in a black slip dress, barefoot, a single glass of champagne in her hand that she had not touched. "Sit down," she said. Ross stayed standing. "If this is about the lunch with the kid, this is about everything." Lola set the glass on the marble console with a soft click. "The nights you don't come home. The girl in Malibu who posts ocean views like trophies. The fact that Seda LaSalle is once again moving you around a board you pretend not to see. I need to know what we're still doing here, Ross." He ran a hand over his face. The famous face looked older under the soft lighting she had chosen on purpose. "I'm trying to keep a career alive." "No, you're trying to feel 25 again while I keep the actual lights on." Her voice stayed level. That frightened him more than shouting ever had. "I have loved you through the dry years. I have called in every favor, smiled at every executive who looked at you like yesterday's news, and stolen the occasional earring just to feel something when the house got too quiet. But I will not be the woman who sits home polishing her diamonds while you hand the rest of your life to a girl who still thinks attention is the same thing as power." Ross finally sat. The couch accepted him like an old accomplice. "What do you want from me?" "Choose." Lola walked closer until she stood between his knees. "Come back, all the way. Or leave clean and let me rebuild without the constant humiliation of wondering whose perfume is on my sheets." He looked up at her. For a moment, the old Ross was there. The one who had once told her she was the only real thing in a city built on mirrors. Then the moment passed. "I don't know how to be the man you need right now," he said. Lola nodded once, as if he had simply confirmed the weather. "Then I'll need the house, the accounts I've always managed, and your public silence while I decide the next move. You can keep the car and the reputation you're so busy destroying. Fair?" Ross gave a short, broken laugh. "You already wrote the terms." "I always do." She stepped back. "There's a guest room made up. Use it. Or don't come home at all tonight. Either way, the conversation is over until you have a better answer." She turned and walked upstairs without looking back. Behind her, Ross stayed on the couch with his head in his hands, the city lights glittering beyond the glass like 1,000 tiny judgments. Chapter 16. The list grows longer. Deaky Andrews spent the morning in a public library downtown because libraries still let people sit without buying anything, and the free Wi-Fi was strong enough. He opened a new browser window and typed the names he had collected in careful order: Ross Conti, Lola Conti, Angel Hudson, Buddy Hudson, Saad LaSalle. The search results painted a world of premieres, divorces, old scandals, and careful public smiles. He read until the patterns began to feel familiar. Certain faces repeated across years. Certain addresses appeared more than once. He printed 3 pages at the library desk, paid in cash, and left before anyone working the counter could remember his features. By afternoon, he was parked 3 blocks from the Conti house in Beverly Hills. The Range Rover was gone. The second car, Ross's, was not. Deaky watched the gate for an hour. No movement. He wrote the observation in the notebook and drew a small box around Lola's name. Patience. In a different part of the city, Detective Leon Rosemont sat across from a tired LAPD lieutenant who had agreed to the meeting mostly out of professional courtesy. The lieutenant flipped through Leon's file with the expression of a man who had seen too many visiting cops arrive with theories and leave with nothing. "You drove across the country on a feeling and a trail of bodies that may or may not belong to the same guy," the lieutenant said. "I can give you a desk for a few days and a number to call if something local matches. I can't give you a task force." Leon nodded. He had expected less. "The girl in the latest photograph, Angel Hudson. She works at a salon in Beverly Hills. If he's here, he'll surface near the people on his list. I'd like to speak with her." The lieutenant slid a business card across the desk. "Don't scare the civilians, and check in before you do anything that requires a lawyer." Leon took the card, thanked him, and left. Outside, the Los Angeles light felt harder than the light in Philadelphia. He sat in his rental car and dialed the salon. A flamboyant voice answered on the second ring, Coco. Leon identified himself carefully, kept the details light, and asked whether Angel Hudson was working that day. Coco's tone changed immediately. "She's not taking strange calls today. There was already some creep in the parking lot earlier this week. You want to talk to her? You come through me and you bring a badge I can see." Leon almost smiled. Protective people were useful. "I'll be there in an hour." He hung up and stared at the composite sketch one more time. Deaky Andrews looked back at him with the same quiet face that had already crossed half the country. Leon started the engine. The city was large, but lists made it smaller. At the Conti house, Lola stood at her bedroom window and watched a dark sedan she did not recognize idle 3 blocks down the hill. It pulled away after a few minutes. She made a note of the time and the direction, then returned to the spreadsheet open on her laptop, the one that tracked every account, every favor, and every quiet investment she had built while Ross was busy becoming someone else's problem. The marriage might be ending. The empire she had constructed around it would not. Lola Conti had never been in the business of losing. She only changed the terms. Chapter 17. Badge at the salon. Coco saw the detective the moment he stepped through the glass doors. The man had the look: tired eyes, careful shoes, a jacket that had seen too many nights in rental cars. Coco stepped in front of the reception desk like a velvet wall. "You the one who called?" Leon Rosemont showed the badge without flourish. "Detective Leon Rosemont, Philadelphia." I'm hoping to speak with Angel Hudson for a few minutes. Nothing formal, just questions. Coco studied the badge, then the face. She's in the back. Pregnant. Already had one stranger watching her this week. You don't get to add to the stress without me in the room. Understood. Angel came out wiping her hands on a towel, belly rounded under a black salon smock. When she saw the badge, her face tightened, but she didn't back away. Coco steered them into the small break room and closed the door most of the way. Leon kept his voice low and even. I'm investigating a man who may have traveled from the East Coast to Los Angeles. Quiet, mid-20s, tends to watch people before he approaches. You reported someone matching that description in the parking lot. Angel glanced at Coco, then nodded. He knew my name, knew I was married to Buddy, East Coast accent. Didn't come closer, but he didn't leave either. Just stared. Leon opened a thin folder and turned it so she could see the composite. This look familiar? Angel's hand went to her stomach. The recognition was immediate. That's him. Coco muttered something sharp under his breath. Leon closed the folder. Has he made contact again? Calls, messages, anything? No, but I've been looking over my shoulder every time I leave. Angel's voice stayed steady, even as her fingers pressed against her belly. Is he dangerous? Leon chose the truth carefully. He's left a trail of bodies between Philadelphia and here. I believe he's building towards something. If you see him again, you don't approach. You call me directly. He slid a card across the table. Day or night. Angel took the card. Coco took a picture of it with his phone. I'm driving her home from now on, Coco said. And Buddy's going to hear about this whether he likes it or not. Leon stood. I'd like to speak with Buddy Hudson as well. Today, if possible. Angel hesitated. He's at a meeting with Said LaSalle. About a role? I can have him call you. Leon nodded. He left the salon with the composite folded back into the folder and the certainty that Deaky Andrews was already closer than the city wanted to admit. Outside, he sat in the rental car and added the salon address to the map he was building by hand. Lists made large cities smaller. He intended to make this one small enough to corner a ghost. Chapter 18. The photographs land. Montana Gray was in the middle of rewriting a scene when the email arrived. No subject line, no message body, only 3 attached images. She opened the first one and felt the air leave the room. Neil and Gina Germain, clear enough, time-stamped. The bungalow she had visited once in happier years. The second photo was closer. The third left nothing to interpretation. Montana sat very still. The cursor blinked on her unfinished sentence like it was waiting for instructions. She forwarded the email to a private folder, then deleted it from the inbox. Her hands did not shake. That almost frightened her more than the pictures. She picked up the phone and called Neil. It rang 4 times before he answered with the careful voice he used when he was already lying. Hey, I'm in the middle of... I have the photographs, Montana said. All 3 of them. So whatever speech you were preparing, skip it. Silence stretched. Somewhere on Neil's end, a door closed. Montana, you will be home by 8. You will sit at the table and tell me the exact shape of this. And then you will listen while I decide what happens next. If you're even 5 minutes late, I start making calls, starting with my lawyer and ending with every producer who still thinks you're reliable. She hung up before he could answer. Then she opened the script for Street People and began cutting the male lead's most sympathetic scenes with clean, surgical keystrokes. If Neil Gray wanted to destroy what they had built, she would at least control the version of the story that survived. Across the city, Gina Germain received a 1-word text from the same anonymous account that had sent the photos. Delivered. She smiled, stretched across the sheets of the hotel room she had booked under a production alias, and ordered champagne she had no intention of sharing. The role she wanted was getting closer. All it required was the right amount of pressure applied to the right man at the right time. In the Conti house, Lola sat at the dining table with printed bank statements and a highlighter, methodically separating what belonged to the marriage from what belonged to her alone. Ross had not returned to the guest room. His silence was its own answer. She highlighted another line and kept working. Her phone lit up with a message from Bibi. Kiana was at the same party as Ross tonight. They didn't leave together, but they didn't leave strangers either. Want me to dig? Lola typed back without pausing her highlighter. Dig. Then she returned to the numbers. Love could leave. Money, properly arranged, stayed exactly where she put it. Chapter 19. The Kitchen Confrontation. Neil Gray walked into the house at 7:52 p.m. and found Montana already seated at the kitchen island with a single glass of red wine and the calm expression of a woman who had finished crying hours ago. The photographs were not on the table. She did not need them to be. Sit, she said. He sat. The silence stretched until it became another presence in the room. How long? Montana asked. 3 weeks. Was it only sex? Neil's mouth opened, then closed. The truth was uglier than the lie he had prepared. It started as sex. She wants the larger role in the film. She has pictures. She made sure I knew it. Montana nodded once as if he had simply confirmed a weather report. So you traded our marriage for a threat and a younger body. I didn't plan. You never plan, Neil. That's the problem. You drift until someone else has to clean the wreckage. She turned the wine glass slowly by its stem. Oliver Eastern already smells blood. If these pictures surface, he'll use them to bury street people and me with it. Congratulations. Your weakness just became my professional problem. Neil reached for her hand. She moved it out of range. I'm going to finish this script the way it deserves to be finished, Montana said. You're going to stay out of my sight while I do it. The guest house is available. Use it, or find somewhere else. I don't care which. What I do care about is that you never again insult me by thinking I wouldn't find out. She stood, collected her laptop, and walked toward the hallway. At the doorway, she paused without looking back. And Neil, if Gina Germain ever contacts me directly, I will end more than just your sobriety. Are we clear? Yes. The bedroom door closed upstairs with a soft, final click. Neil remained at the island with his head in his hands, the taste of old whiskey rising in the back of his throat like a memory that refused to stay dead. Chapter 20. Pressure from every side. Buddy Hudson left Sad LaSalle's office after dark with a new set of sides and a schedule that now included public appearances beside Ross Conti. The deal was moving faster than he had expected. The cost still felt hidden. He found Angel on the couch with her feet elevated, and Coco's number already open on her phone. The detective's card sat on the coffee table like a warning. He came to the salon, Angel said before Buddy could speak. The man from the parking lot. There's a detective from Philadelphia looking for him. He's killed people, Buddy, on the way here. Buddy went still. The protective heat rose fast. Why the fuck didn't you call me the second he showed the badge? Because you were with Sade. Because every time I reach for you lately, you're reaching for the next opportunity instead. Her voice broke on the last word. I'm pregnant and some stranger knows my name and my husband's name and now a cop is involved. I need you here, not performing for Sade LaSalle. Buddy sat beside her and pulled her against his chest. For a moment, the old version of them, the one that had believed love was enough, returned. I'm here. I'll talk to the detective. I'll drive you everywhere. No more meetings after dark until this is handled. Angel let herself believe him for the length of one long breath. Then the baby kicked, and the fear returned with it. Across the city, Deaky Andrews stood in the shadows across from the Conti gate and watched Lola's silhouette move past an upstairs window. He had followed the Range Rover from the salon earlier, keeping 3 cars back, patient as always. The house was larger than the photographs had suggested. That did not matter. Houses were only walls. He opened the notebook and added a fresh line beneath Lola's name. Night, second floor. Alone. Then he walked back to the borrowed car and drove toward the motel, already planning the next approach. Speaking to Angel had been impulsive. The next contact would be deliberate. In the guest room of his own home, Ross Conti sat on the edge of the bed and stared at two messages on his phone. One from Kiana. I miss your mouth. Come over. One from Sade. Lunch with Buddy went well. Tomorrow you introduce him to the producer I told you about. Smile for the cameras. Ross deleted both, then opened a third thread, the one with Lola that had gone silent. He typed and erased 3 different sentences before finally sending nothing at all. Outside, the hills glittered with other people's parties. Inside, the house felt like a museum of a marriage that was already over. Lola, 2 doors away, finished updating the accounts and closed the laptop. She poured the champagne she had been denying herself all night, stood at the window, and raised the glass to her own reflection. Your move, she whispered to the city, and drank. Chapter 21. Public Smiles, Private Knives. The producer Sade had chosen for the introduction preferred places where the lighting made everyone look important. Ross Conti arrived first, ordered sparkling water, and rehearsed the smile he would need when Buddy walked in. The smile still worked. The rest of him felt like it was running on borrowed time. Buddy arrived exactly on time, clean, focused, the new sides already highlighted. They shook hands for the benefit of anyone watching. The producer, an older man with a permanent suntan and eyes that calculated percentages, joined them 5 minutes later. Conversation stayed light until the second round of drinks. Then the real talk began. Budget, shooting schedule, the particular value of having Ross Conti's name attached even in a supporting capacity. Ross did his part. He praised Buddy's instincts. He told a carefully edited story about his own early days. He laughed at the producer's jokes. When the meeting ended, they stood on the sidewalk while a photographer who had been tipped off in advance captured the 3 of them together. The caption would write itself, Ross Conti passes the torch. As soon as the producer's car pulled away, Ross's phone lit up with a message from Kiana. Saw the pictures already. You're very generous these days. Come celebrate with someone who actually wants you. He stared at the screen until Buddy spoke. You good? Ross pocketed the phone. Define good. Buddy hesitated, then said quietly, My wife has a detective asking questions. Some guy from back east has been watching her. If this role is going to put more eyes on us, I need to know what I'm walking into. Ross looked at the younger man and saw every hungry version of himself he had once been. In this town, the role is never just the role. Sade doesn't hand out favors, she hands out leashes. Decide now how tight you're willing to wear yours. He walked to his car without waiting for an answer. Behind him, Buddy stood on the sidewalk with the sides rolled in one hand and the first real doubt settling in his chest. Chapter 22. The First Blood in Los Angeles. Deaky Andrews chose the hour just before dawn because the streets were emptiest and the people who stayed awake that late usually had secrets of their own. He parked 2 blocks from the Conti house, walked the rest of the way, and stood across the street studying the gate and the cameras. The system was good, but not perfect. He had studied better ones. He did not go inside, not yet. Instead, he left a single item on the curb where the Range Rover would have to pass it on the way out. A photograph printed on plain paper, face up. The photograph showed Lola Conti leaving a boutique 3 days earlier, shopping bag in one hand, phone in the other. On the back, in the same black ink he always used, he had written one word, soon. Then he walked back to the car and drove away before the first serious light touched the hills. Lola found the photograph at 8:14 a.m. when she walked out to collect the mail she no longer trusted the staff to handle. She recognized the angle of the shot immediately. Someone had been close. She carried the picture inside between 2 fingers, laid it on the kitchen island, and called the private security firm she kept on retainer. While she waited for them to arrive, she photographed the note, Sent it to BB with a single instruction: find out who prints these, and then poured coffee with hands that remained perfectly steady. Ross appeared in the doorway of the guest room, hair still damp from a shower. "What's that?" Lola turned the photograph so he could see it. "Someone is watching the house. Watching me. Leave any theories you have about random fans at the door. This was deliberate." Ross came closer. The writing on the back made the air in the kitchen feel thinner. "We should call the police." "I already called people who answer faster." Lola's voice was ice over steel. "You can stay and be useful, or you can go back to whatever soft place you've been sleeping. But this house is mine to protect. Do not get in my way." She turned back to the window and watched the street as if the man who had left the photograph might still be standing there, smiling at the first real move of the game. Across the city, Detective Leon Rosemont received a call from Coco that the same composite sketch had just become a lot less theoretical. A photograph left at a Beverly Hills address, a single word on the back. Leon grabbed his keys and the file and headed toward the Conti house with the certainty that the list in Deaky Andrews' head was no longer just a list. It had started choosing doors. Chapter 23. The Detective at the Gate. Leon Roseman arrived at the Conti house 40 minutes after Lola's call to security. The private team had already bagged the photograph and were reviewing gate footage that showed almost nothing useful. A figure in a dark jacket, head down, careful to avoid the best angles. Leon badged the lead guard, listened to Lola's account without interrupting, and then asked to see the note again. "Soon," he read aloud. "That's consistent with the pattern. He watches, he leaves small markers, then he escalates." Lola stood with her arms folded, still in the same clothes she had pulled on at dawn. Escalates how? In the other cities, it moved from notes to contact, then to violence. The victims were people connected to a short list of names he carries. "Your name is on that list now, Mrs. Conti. So is your husband's. So is Angel Hudson's." Ross, who had remained near the doorway, spoke for the first time. "Why us? We've never met this man." Leon met his eyes. "That's what I'm here to find out. In the meantime, I need both of you to vary your routines, keep security close, and call me the second anything feels off. No more shopping alone, no more late drives. He's already been close enough to leave a gift at your curb." Lola nodded once. "I'll handle my side. What do you need from us?" "Permission to coordinate with your security team and a list of anyone who might have a recent grudge strong enough to point a killer in your direction." Leon's gaze flicked briefly toward Ross. Personal or professional? The silence that followed was long enough to become an answer of its own. Lola finally said, "I'll have the list to you by this afternoon." After Leon left, Ross tried to speak. Lola raised one hand without looking at him. "Not now. I have calls to make and a house to lock down. If you want to be useful, stay inside and stay visible. If you want to be the problem, there's the door." She walked into her office and closed it softly behind her. Ross remained in the hallway, listening to the sound of his own marriage finishing its last quiet inventory. Chapter 24. Everyone bleeds eventually. Sad LaSalle received the news about the photograph at the Conti house before noon. Information moved fast when you paid the right people to move it. She sat in her glass office and considered the new variable with the same calm she brought to every contract. A killer with a list that included Ross and Lola was either a complication or an opportunity. She had not decided which. What she did know was that pressure made people careless, and careless people signed better deals. She called Buddy Hudson. "Change of schedule. I want you at the Conti house this evening. Ross will be there. So will I. We're going to discuss the next phase of your introduction while the cameras still like the story." Buddy's voice sounded tighter than usual. "My wife has a detective on her. Some psychopath left a note at Ross's place. Is this really the time?" "This is exactly the time," Sade said. "Fear makes men loyal. Be there at 7. Wear something that photographs expensive. She hung up and opened the old envelope she kept in the bottom drawer. The photograph of young Ross still looked like a promise he had broken. Sade touched the edge of it once, then closed the drawer. Some debts required more than money. Across the city, Montana Gray sat in Oliver Eastern's outer office waiting for a meeting she had demanded. When she was finally shown in, Oliver smiled the smile of a man who already smelled victory. "I hear domestic trouble is making the rounds," he said. "Shame. Distraction kills careers faster than bad reviews." Montana placed a single flash drive on his desk. "That's the cut of Street People I'm prepared to lock. Grandmother stays. Title stays. The male lead's arc is tighter and less forgiving. You can take it to the board as is, or you can try to fire me and explain to every black woman with a platform why you killed the version that actually had teeth." Oliver's smile thinned. "You're playing a dangerous game." "I'm playing the only game left." Montana stood. "You have until Friday. After that, the drive goes to 3 other buyers who already asked for a look. Your move, Oliver." She walked out before he could answer. In the elevator, she finally allowed her hands to tremble. Neil had texted twice. She had not answered. Some silences were the only power left. That same afternoon, Deaky Andrews returned to the public library, printed one fresh photograph, and wrote a new word on the back. This time, the word was a name: Angel. He folded the paper carefully, slid it into his jacket, and walked back out into the Los Angeles sun. The list was no longer patient. Neither was he. Chapter 25. The night the list came due. The Conti house had never held so many people who hated one another under the same roof. Sade arrived first, precise as a blade, Buddy trailing behind her in the expensive shirt she had told him to wear. Ross waited in the living room with a drink he was not supposed to have. Lola stood near the fireplace in black, diamond studs like warning lights, private security posted discreetly at the perimeter she now controlled. Leon Rosemont had insisted on being present once the meeting was confirmed. He remained near the window with a clear view of the gate, phone in hand, the composite sketch burned into the back of his mind. Angel had refused to stay home. Coco had driven her and now waited outside in the car with the engine running, refusing to leave the pregnant woman he loved like a niece anywhere near danger without him close. Angel sat on the edge of a chair in the foyer, both hands on her belly, the detective's card still in her pocket. The conversation began with business, Buddy's role, the producer's interest, the careful public narrative Sade was constructing. It did not stay there. Lola cut through the polished talk with a single sentence. "Someone left a photograph of me on my own curb with the word soon written on the back. The same man has been watching Angel. A detective from Philadelphia believes he has already killed his way across the country to reach this city. So before we discuss careers, I want to know if any of you brought this to my door." Sade's expression did not change. "I collect debts, Lola. I don't hire maniacs." Ross set his glass down harder than necessary. "This is insane. We should all leave and let the police handle it." Leon spoke from the window. "Leaving is how he isolates the next target. We stay visible and together until I have a better option." Outside, beyond the reach of the camera's best angles, Deaky Andrews moved along the side of the property he had mapped for days. The gun was a familiar weight. The notebook was closed and put away. The time for lists had ended. The time for corrections had arrived. He reached the service entrance the security team had checked twice already that evening. The third time was the one that mattered. A single silenced shot dropped the guard, who turned too late. Deaky stepped over the body and entered the house the way smoke enters a room. Quiet, inevitable. The first scream came from the hallway. Leon spun, weapon already drawn. "Everyone down, now!" Chaos fractured the room. Sade moved behind a column with the calm of a woman who had survived worse. Buddy lunged toward Angel, wrapping her against his chest and pulling her toward the floor. Ross froze for one fatal second, too long. Lola did not. She grabbed the heavy crystal decanter from the sideboard and smashed it against the head of the man who came through the doorway with the still eyes Angel had described. Deaky staggered but did not fall. Blood ran into his left eye. He raised the gun toward the nearest moving target, Ross, and fired. The shot caught Ross high in the shoulder and spun him into the wall. Angel screamed. Buddy covered her body with his own. Leon's second shot took Deaky in the thigh. The third took him center mass. Deaky dropped to his knees, then to the marble, the gun sliding from his hand. He tried to speak. Only a wet sound came out. His eyes found Angel one last time, searching for a recognition that had never existed outside his own fractured story. Then the light in them went flat. Silence crashed over the house in pieces. Sirens already rising in the distance, someone crying, the wet rasp of Ross trying to breathe through pain. Lola stood over Deaky's body with the broken neck of the decanter still in her hand, chest rising and falling, diamonds glittering under the blood spatter that had reached her cheek. She looked at Leon. "Is it finished?" Leon checked for a pulse that was no longer there. "This part is." Paramedics flooded the house minutes later. Ross was loaded onto a stretcher, conscious, cursing, the famous face gray with shock. Angel was checked and cleared, the baby's heartbeat strong and furious. Buddy held her like a man who had finally understood the cost of every shortcut he had ever taken. Sad LaSalle watched it all from the edge of the room, already recalculating. The photographs of young Ross remained in her desk drawer across town. Debts did not die with the people who owed them. They simply waited for the next debtor. In the days that followed, the story fractured into the versions Hollywood preferred. A deranged stalker, a heroic detective, a family under siege. The deeper connections, the old photographs in Deaky's bag that tied back to a long-buried East Coast scandal involving a plastic surgeon, a young actress, and a night no one had ever reported, never made the final cuts of the news packages. Lola Conti buried the worst of the bloodstains under new marble and tighter security. She visited Ross in the hospital once, signed the separation papers on the tray table over his lap, and left the house in her name alone. The empire she had built while he was busy becoming legend would continue without him. Montana Gray locked the final cut of Street People and sold it out from under Oliver Eastern to a streamer that still believes stories about Black women deserved to keep their teeth. Neil moved into a temporary apartment and attended meetings every day. Gina Germain received a quiet settlement and a smaller role in someone else's film. She took both. Buddy Hudson kept the role Sade had engineered. He also kept Angel and the baby who arrived 6 weeks later, a girl with her mother's eyes and a cry that could stop a room. Whether the past stayed buried would depend on how carefully he guarded the life he now knew he did not deserve. Detective Leon Rosemont flew home to Millie with one more closed file and the same stubborn weight in his chest. Some lists ended. Others only waited for the next name. On a clear evening weeks later, Lola stood alone on the terrace of the house that was fully hers and raised a glass of champagne to the glittering grid below. The city still owed her nothing. She intended to collect anyway. Somewhere in the hills, a new set of ambitions was already sharpening its knives. Hollywood never ran out of hungry people. It only ran out of people who remembered the cost. The lights kept shining.
All right, let's count this.
You sure that's all of it? Don't trust him. We all need to see. Yeah, count it right.
No tricks.
Tempo, said the 82 BPM. Tempo, traffic in my life. Hollywood hustler, riding good, looking good like I knew I would. Getting money, it's the season. Drop the top, fighting with demons, new city. Same pain, I'ma carry on. Whole room full full of people, still feel alone. Diamonds on my neck, can't cover what's gone. Got everything I wanted, still don't feel home. Has it ever been this easy? Money coming, everybody need me. Top down, but my heart still freezing. Smile outside while I'm fighting these demons. It's never no love when you step on your loved one just to get above. Where is the trust? Petty depths, stealing hearts just for the rush. Looking good, riding good, money coming up. Hollywood hustler, who can I trust? New friends love me 'cause I finally made it. Old friends watching secretly, they hate it. You can touch my body, can you touch my soul? Can you love the parts that money can't control? It's never no rush. When you step on your loved ones just to get above.